setting the context for the Trump era. As dawn broke on the political landscape of the United States at the start of the 2010s, few could have anticipated the tectonic shifts that were on the horizon. The election of Barack Obama in 2008, with its message of hope and change, was seen by many as a marker of American progress, a move toward a post-racial society. Yet beneath the visible surface of American politics, currents of discontent, disillusionment, and anger were beginning to swirl. The Great Recession of 2008 played a pivotal role in shaping the socio-political climate of the time. The economic downturn, which saw millions of Americans losing their homes and jobs, sowed seeds of mistrust toward traditional institutions, especially the banking sector and the federal government. While economists and policymakers debated the causes and remedies for the recession, for many Americans, the situation was clear. The elites in Wall Street and Washington had failed them. In this backdrop, the rise of the Tea Party movement became emblematic of a broader pushback against establishment politics. Espousing a fervent brand of fiscal conservatism, while often veering into nativism, the Tea Party was as much a reaction to Obama's policies as it was a manifestation of deeper societal divisions. Town hall meetings, once civil and procedural, turned raucous. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as it came to be known, became a lightning rod for controversy, with debates over its merits often devolving into ideological trench warfare. Media played a critical role in amplifying these divides. The ascendance of polarized news outlets, most notably on the conservative side with Fox News, created echo chambers where individuals were rarely exposed to opposing viewpoints. The digital age, with its promise of democratized information, ironically also facilitated the rise of misinformation. Social media platforms became the new battlegrounds, with algorithms amplifying sensationalist and often misleading content. This environment was fertile ground for populist rhetoric, which often found its mark among those feeling left behind by globalization, rapid technological change, and shifting cultural norms. Enter Donald J. Trump. A businessman and reality television star, Trump had long flirted with the idea of a presidential run. But it wasn't until 2015, descending the escalator of Trump Tower, that he formally announced his bid. His campaign message was simple and resonant: "Make America Great Again." For many, this slogan was a clarion call to return to an era where American might, both economically and culturally, was unchallenged. For others, it harkened back to a time before the complexities of the modern age, before the challenges of a multicultural, multi-ethnic society became prominent. Trump's candidature was unlike any seen in modern American politics. He eschewed political norms, often resorting to personal attacks and unverified claims. His style was brash, direct, and unapologetic. While many in the political establishment scoffed at his chances, dismissing him as a sideshow, his message found takers. The Republican primaries, initially seen as a crowded field with seasoned politicians, soon became a testament to Trump's ability to dominate the media cycle and tap into the grassroots frustrations. But Trump's rise cannot be seen merely as a function of his unique personality or political savvy. It was also a reflection of deeper currents in American society. The urban-rural divide, the tension between globalism and nationalism, the debates over immigration and identity, all found a focal point in the 2016 election. Yet, this was not just an American phenomenon. Across the Atlantic, similar sentiments were taking root. The Brexit vote in the UK, the rise of far-right parties in Europe, and growing authoritarianism in countries like Hungary and Poland were all part of a larger global tapestry. The post-Cold War liberal order, which had seen the spread of democracy and free markets, appeared to be under siege from within. Understanding the Trump era requires us to delve deeper than the man himself. It demands a nuanced examination of the societal, economic, and cultural forces that converged to create a moment unique in American history. It is an exploration of not just one individual's rise to the highest office in the land, but also of a nation grappling with its identity in an age of unprecedented change. As we navigate through this analysis, it's crucial to approach the subject with a sense of balance. While it's easy to get ensnared in the polarized debates of the day, our objective should be to understand rather than judge. For in understanding we find the keys to the future, ensuring that the lessons of the past are not merely archived, but actively inform the path ahead. The symbiotic relationship between Trump and the alt-right. In the vast and variegated spectrum of American political movements, few have stirred as much controversy, intrigue, and concern as the alt-right. Emerging from the darker corners of the internet and propelled into the mainstream spotlight during the 2016 presidential election, the alt-right became an undeniable force that many saw as closely intertwined with Donald Trump's rise to power. To understand the Trump era in its entirety, it is imperative to unravel the nature of this relationship and what it reveals about modern American politics and society. The alt-right, short for alternative right, is an umbrella term that encapsulates a range of far-right ideologies, groups, and individuals. Its adherents often reject mainstream conservatism, leaning instead towards a mix of nativism, white nationalism, anti-globalism, and populism. While definitions can vary, many within this movement are bound together by their disdain for political correctness, their skepticism of multiculturalism, and a desire to defend what they see as the endangered culture of the West. At the dawn of Trump's 2016 campaign, the alt-right was largely relegated to the depths of internet chat rooms, message boards like 4chan, and niche websites. However, as Trump's campaign gathered momentum, many began to notice a unique and evolving dynamic. Trump's unfiltered style, his open criticism of the establishment, and his hardline stance on issues like immigration resonated with many within the alt-right community. But how did a New York billionaire with a history of liberal views and no fixed ideological compass become a darling of a movement that had traditionally viewed the political establishment with nothing but disdain? Part of the answer lies in Trump's keen instinct for tapping into prevailing public sentiments. Throughout his campaign, whether by design or by instinct, Trump hit upon issues that were central to the alt-right's philosophy. His promises to build a wall on the southern border, his skepticism toward international alliances like NATO, and his criticism of trade deals echoed the protectionist, America First sentiment that was brewing among many in the nation. For the alt-right, Trump was not merely a political candidate. He was a vessel for their previously marginalized views. However, as with many symbiotic relationships, the flow of influence was not one-sided. As Trump's campaign evolved, it became apparent that he was not just influencing the alt-right, but was, in many ways, being influenced by it. This was most evident in the digital space. Trump's Twitter feed, a primary tool for his political messaging, often shared or retweeted content originating from alt-right sources. This included controversial memes, conspiracy theories, and at times content that was overtly racist or anti-Semitic. This digital camaraderie was bolstered by tangible connections. Figures like Steve Bannon, who proudly proclaimed Breitbart News as the platform for the alt-right, found themselves in influential positions within the Trump campaign and later, the White House. This proximity to power was unprecedented for a movement that had long been on the fringes. Yet, it would be overly simplistic to suggest that Trump was a mere puppet of the alt-right or vice versa. Their relationship was more nuanced. At times, they were in lockstep, united in their goals and messaging. At other times, they were at odds, especially when Trump's policies or statements didn't align with the alt-right's purist views. What's undeniable is that the relationship benefited both. For Trump, the alt-right's digital savvy, its army of online supporters, and its ability to shape narratives was an invaluable asset, especially in an era where traditional campaign tactics were being upended by the power of social media. For the alt-right, Trump's platform gave them legitimacy and a voice in corridors of power they had never accessed before. This association, however, came with its fair share of controversies. The 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, which resulted in violent clashes and the death of a counter-protester, was a grim testament to the dangers of far-right extremism. Trump's response, where he claimed there were very fine people on both sides, was seen by many as a tacit endorsement of the alt-right and drew widespread condemnation. Such incidents highlighted the pitfalls of the Trump alt-right association. They raised questions about the limits of free speech, the dangers of extremist ideologies, and the responsibilities of those in power. While Trump occasionally distanced himself from the alt-right, especially when faced with significant backlash, the ties that bound them, whether ideological, tactical, or opportunistic, remained evident. In examining the symbiotic relationship between Trump and the alt-right, it's essential to view it against the broader backdrop of global political shifts. Just as Trump found allies in the alt-right, populist leaders worldwide were tapping into similar far-right movements, driven by concerns over immigration, fears of cultural dilution, and economic disenfranchisement. As we navigate this intricate tapestry, it's crucial to remember that the Trump alt-right nexus is but one facet of a multifaceted era. It is emblematic of broader societal struggles, the push and pull between globalization and nationalism, between the familiar and the changing. To understand it is to gain insight not just into a specific period in American history, but into the timeless dance of politics, power, and people. The lasting impact on American politics and society. The influence of Donald Trump and the alt-right on American politics didn't simply end after election cycles or political rallies. It etched a lasting imprint on the nation's socio-political fabric. As the dust began to settle following the whirlwind years of the Trump administration, it became clear that the ramifications of this era were profound, reverberating in corridors of power, town hall meetings, and family dinner tables. One of the most immediately visible impacts was on the grand old party, GOP itself. The Republican Party, which once prided itself on being the party of Abraham Lincoln and held aloft figures like Ronald Reagan as its modern-day icons, found itself grappling with its identity in the Trump era. The staunch fiscal conservatism, internationalism, and emphasis on family values that once defined the party seemed to be overshadowed by Trump's brand of populism. Many traditional Republicans, especially those in the establishment, faced a dilemma: adapt to the changing tides or risk political obscurity. Some, like Senators Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, chose to step away, their voices of dissent drowned out by a party increasingly molded in Trump's image. Others chose to align with Trump's vision, recognizing the undeniable grip he held over the party's base. Beyond party politics, the political discourse in the country underwent a seismic shift. The boundaries of what was deemed acceptable or normal in political rhetoric were continually stretched. Politicians and public figures began adopting a more confrontational, often aggressive style of communication. This say-it-as-it-is approach, while celebrated by many for its candor, often treaded the dangerous line between forthrightness and misinformation. The era of alternative facts, as coined by Trump's advisor Kellyanne Conway, didn't just challenge the media but posed fundamental questions about the nature of truth in the public domain. The media landscape, already in flux due to technological advancements, found itself in an unprecedented position. Mainstream media outlets, historically seen as pillars of objectivity, were branded as fake news whenever their reports or analyses seemed unfavorable to Trump. This undermining of traditional media went hand in hand with the rise of alternative news sources, many of which operated online with little to no editorial oversight, further polarizing the already divided American society. However, perhaps the most profound impact was on the American social fabric. The divisions that were simmering beneath the surface became pronounced. Issues like immigration, race, and national identity weren't just policy matters discussed in Washington. They became deeply personal, influencing relationships, friendships, and community dynamics. The nation that prided itself as a melting pot of cultures and ideas seemed increasingly like a salad bowl with distinct, often conflicting elements. This period also saw a renewed engagement with politics, especially among the youth. While many were disillusioned by the state of affairs, this disenchantment translated into activism rather than apathy. The March for Our Lives movement, sparked by the tragic school shooting in Parkland, Florida, exemplified this newfound vigor. Young Americans, regardless of their political affiliations, began to realize the power of their voice, their vote, and their ability to shape the future. The judiciary, historically seen as a counterbalance to political whims, wasn't immune to the tremors of this era. The Supreme Court, with its lifetime appointments, saw significant shifts that will likely influence American jurisprudence for decades. Contentious nomination processes, like that of Justice Brett Kavanaugh, highlighted the deeply partisan nature of what was once considered a relatively apolitical process. Internationally, America's role on the global stage was redefined. Long-standing alliances were questioned, international agreements like the Paris Accord were abandoned, and a more transactional approach to diplomacy emerged. While proponents argued this was America finally prioritizing its interests, critics feared it signaled a retreat from the global leadership role the U.S. had assumed post-World War II. Economically, the period was marked by significant deregulation, tax cuts, and an overall pro-business stance. While the stock markets responded favorably and unemployment figures reached historic lows, debates raged over income inequality, healthcare, and the potential long-term impacts of an isolationist trade policy. As the dust settles, historians, political scientists, and everyday Americans will continue to grapple with the full measure of this era's impact. Did it mark a temporary deviation from America's historical trajectory, or did it signal a more fundamental shift in the nation's character? While definitive answers might be elusive, what's clear is that the Trump era, with its convulsions and confrontations, its challenges and changes, will be dissected for generations as a period that undeniably shaped the course of America's future. The international dimension of right-wing populism. The rise of right-wing populism is not uniquely an American phenomenon. Indeed, throughout the latter part of the 20th century and into the 21st, a surge of populist movements and leaders have been gaining ground in many parts of the world. While the rise of Donald Trump and the alt-right captured the global media's attention, they were but actors on a larger global stage where similar dramas were unfolding. Europe, with its rich tapestry of history and complex socio-political landscapes, became a significant theater for the rise of right-wing populism. The economic challenges posed by the 2008 financial crisis, combined with the cultural and societal pressures of migration, particularly during the refugee crisis starting in 2015, created an environment ripe for populist narratives. In nations like Hungary, Poland, and Italy, leaders emerged promising to defend national identities, traditions, and borders from perceived threats, both internal and external. Hungary's Viktor Orbán, for instance, championed the cause of illiberal democracy, presenting himself as the bulwark against a tide of Western liberal values that, in his view, threatened the nation's Christian identity. Poland's Law and Justice Party tapped into similar sentiments, emphasizing traditional values and national sovereignty, often positioning themselves in opposition to the European Union's ideals. Italy saw the rise of Matteo Salvini and the Northern League, who used concerns over migration and European bureaucracy to rally supporters. In Western Europe, too, right-wing populist movements gained traction. France's Marine Le Pen of the National Rally, formerly National Front, centered her campaign around French nationalism, critiques of globalization, and staunch opposition to immigration. The Netherlands' Geert Wilders, with his Party for Freedom, employed anti-Islam rhetoric and concerns about Dutch identity to gain followers. The Brexit vote in the United Kingdom was another manifestation of this wave. While the decision to leave the European Union was driven by a myriad of factors, the role of right-wing populists like Nigel Farage and his UK Independence Party, UKIP, cannot be understated. Their portrayal of the EU as an overreaching institution and concerns over immigration became central issues in the referendum. However, Europe wasn't the sole continent grappling with the ascent of right-wing populism. In South America, Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro rode a wave of discontent with traditional politics, positioning himself as the outsider who would combat corruption, uphold traditional family values, and take a hard line on crime. His rhetoric, often controversial, tapped into a broader global trend of leaders who positioned themselves in stark contrast to the so-called establishment. Asia, too, wasn't insulated. In India, Narendra Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party surged to power with promises of a resurgent nation, often emphasizing Hindu identity in a diverse country. In the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, with his uncompromising stance on drug-related crimes and his disdain for traditional diplomatic decorum, epitomized the populist leader's mold. But what drives this global tilt towards right-wing populism? A common thread weaving through these movements is the perception of lost national greatness and identity in the face of globalization. As the world became more interconnected, with goods, services, and people moving fluidly across borders, there emerged a sense among many that this global order was benefiting only a select few: the urban elite, the technocrats, the bureaucrats, while leaving behind the average citizen. Economic disparities, often exacerbated by the very real consequences of global trade and automation, lent credence to this narrative. Many who once enjoyed stable livelihoods found themselves struggling, their anxieties manifesting in a desire for simpler times and familiar settings. Culturally, the rapid pace of societal change, be it through migration or the diffusion of liberal values, led to feelings of alienation among segments of populations. These sentiments became fertile ground for leaders who promised a return to tradition, often viewing the world through a lens of cultural and civilizational clashes. Technology played its role too. The internet, especially social media, amplified populist messages, often simplifying complex issues into digestible, shareable, and frequently polarizing content. Echo chambers emerged, reinforcing biases and reducing opportunities for nuanced discussions. Yet, it's crucial to note that while these movements share commonalities, each is deeply rooted in its specific national context. The drivers of right-wing populism in Hungary are not identical to those in Brazil or the United States. Local histories, traditions, and current events shape and mold these movements, even if they share a global zeitgeist. As this chapter of global history unfolds, one thing is clear: right-wing populism is not an aberration. It's a reflection of very real fears, anxieties, and hopes of millions. Understanding its ascent requires empathy, deep analysis, and a willingness to engage with the broader structural issues facing societies worldwide. The challenges posed by this trend will not be resolved by mere electoral cycles, but will require a reimagining of how globalization, culture, and politics intertwine in an increasingly interconnected world. A brief overview of the chapters ahead. In the subsequent pages of this work, readers will be guided through a nuanced journey that seeks to unpack the multifaceted era defined by the rise of Donald Trump, the ascendancy of the alt-right, and the larger global trend of right-wing populism. As the title of the book suggests, we embark on a quest not only to understand events and individuals, but also to comprehend the broader currents that have shaped our world. Our initial chapters focus on the historical antecedents in American politics that set the stage for Trump's rise. Starting with the early days of the American far right, we traverse through moments in time that seem distant but are integral to our story. From the shadows of the KKK to the paranoia of McCarthyism, we unravel how these movements, while seemingly isolated, planted the seeds of distrust towards the establishment and the other. By the time we reach the era of Reagan and the moral majority in the 1970s, we begin to see a convergence of conservative religious values with political power, setting the tone for decades to come. While the historical context provides a foundation, it is the more recent past that offers direct lines of sight to our current era. The anti-Clinton fervor, the rise of conservative media, and the Tea Party movement each symbolized a step towards the political climate ready for a figure like Trump. This journey offers us insights into how long-standing political establishments were challenged and at times dismantled, making way for new voices and, crucially, new modes of political engagement. A significant portion of the narrative then dives into the intricate dance between Trump and the alt-right. While much has been said about their relationship, our exploration delves deeper than most, seeking to understand not just the overt manifestations of their alliance, but the subtler yet profound influences they had on one another. This section delves into the digital battles waged, the ideologues who played puppet masters, and the real-world consequences of online rhetoric. But understanding an era is not just about the leaders or movements. It's about moments. The chapters centered on the 2016 election, Trump's controversial policies, and seminal events like the Capitol insurrection are more than mere recountings of history. They are deep dives into inflection points that shaped the narrative, offering readers a front-row seat to the tussles that defined a nation. The analysis then broadens, exploring the ripple effects of the Trump era on American democracy. We grapple with questions that strike at the very heart of the American experiment. What does the rise of someone like Trump signify about the health of American institutions? How does the embrace of misinformation challenge the foundational principles of a free society? These chapters, perhaps more than others, are a call for introspection, pushing readers to look beyond the headlines and grapple with underlying issues. As we approach the book's latter sections, the lens zooms out, positioning the Trump era within the larger global context. The rise of right-wing populism, as we've touched upon, is not an isolated phenomenon. By examining its manifestations worldwide, we can discern patterns, shared challenges, and unique deviations. This comparative analysis allows us to understand whether the forces that propelled Trump to power are transient or indicative of a more profound global shift. The narrative crescendo culminates in a reflection on the legacy of Trumpism and its implications for the future. It's here that we wrestle with the most challenging questions. What does the future hold for a world shaped by these forces? Can the rifts be healed, or are we destined for deeper divides? It's a contemplation of not just the past, but a pondering of the path ahead. This book, while comprehensive, is by no means the final word on the subject. It is an invitation to reflect, to debate, and to engage with the tumultuous era that has left an indelible mark on the world. As we turn the pages, we embark together on a journey to understand, to question, and hopefully to learn.